Discover the incredible moment a homeless cleaner saved a billionaire's wife when doctors failed. Ray stared at the pristine floors of the hospital, yearning for a world beyond the glimmering surfaces he meticulously cleaned. Each swish of his mop echoed his silent aspirations, changing lives, perhaps even saving them. But as he worked, dressed in the worn-out clothes that marked him invisible among the well-dressed professionals, he felt a knot of despair tighten in his chest, a familiar reminder that no one ever noticed the brilliant mind hidden beneath that scruffy exterior. The whispers of his late mother, a devoted nurse, haunted him. Knowledge is power, she used to say, urging him to read and learn. Yet here he was, mopping floors, every textbook he had devoured seemingly irrelevant in this world of white coats and polished shoes, that a sudden commotion shattered his thoughts. Doctors burst past him, their hurried conversations strung with urgency. Ray shifted nervously, wiping his brow as he observed the chaos near the doctor's office. As he scrubbed, he could feel the tension crackle in the air. His heart raced. What if his chance was finally here? A fire ignited deep within a fragile blend of hope and trepidation. Could he bravely speak up? Would they even listen? He hesitated, wrestling with the fear of rejection, the weight of his perceived worthlessness bearing down on him. But memories of his mother rushed back, filling his mind with knowledge imparted long ago. His mother's gentle voice whispered against the backdrop of the hospital chaos. It urged him to act, to defy the skepticism he had known his entire life. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that is happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let us continue. In that moment, a piercing scream split the air, a sharp cry that sent the doctors scrambling. A woman striking, elegantly dressed, had collapsed to the floor. Panic gripped Ray's insides as he watched their frantic attempts to revive her. His instincts kicked in. He knew there was something more to this. They were fumbling, trapped in their conventional wisdom, blind to other possibilities. Pain pierced his chest at the thought of them, overlooking the potential within him, a homeless man with knowledge they couldn't fathom. As murmurs of confusion rose around him, desperation clawed at his throat. He raised his voice, surprising himself. It could be a rare condition. Eyes turned towards him, but the disdain was palpable. Who was he? A mere cleaner among illustrious doctors. Internal conflict raged. Was he foolish to think they'd listen? Yet, the stakes were too high. He could feel the weight of judgment pressing on him, each second ticking away like an agonizing reminder of everything he ever wanted but never believed he deserved. Fear and determination entwined within him, screaming for recognition, fighting against the tide of doubt as he desperately grasped for a chance not just to save her, but to salvage his own unrehearsed narrative. What would happen, he wondered, if he remained silent? Would he forever be that invisible figure, cleaning up messes while drowning in a sea of ignorance? Heart pounding, Ray faced down the tide of prejudice. Would this be the moment the world recognized him? Or would he remain just a shadow in their thoughts? The intensity rose in his chest as the first alarms blared, echoing his own internal turmoil. All paths converged on his next move. He was both an unlikely hero and the embodiment of uncertainty. With one breath, he could transform everything, rewriting the narratives of a life once considered trivial. Would he take that step forward? Ray's resolve crystallized as he watched the elite medical team scramble. He could feel the weight of their skepticism, their disbelief pressing down heavier than the mop handle in his grip. Each pulse of uncertainty pushed him further, but the image of the woman's pale face sparked something deeper within him, a sense of duty intertwined with a desperate yearning for recognition. In a split second, he stepped closer, channeling all his phobia, the fear of dismissal, into an intense focus. "I know about sympathetic neurogenic shock," he blurted out, the words spilling from his lips like a lifeline thrown into turbulent waters. The doctors paused, exchanged bewildered glances, and for a heartbeat, he watched the curtain of their ignorance lift, revealing the possibility that they might indeed listen. "Who are you?" one of the doctors snapped, irritation lacing his tone, as if Ray were an intruder daring to disrupt their orderly world. "I'm a janitor," Ray replied, his voice surprisingly firm. "But I've researched. I've studied." If she yes in shock, stimulating the vagus nerve could stabilize her heartbeat. The words felt powerful as they rolled off his tongue, a promise of knowledge that lay dormant for too long, trapped in the depths of his mind. Hope flared alongside the recognition that this was not merely about the woman on the ground. It was a confrontation of everything he had endured. The doctor hesitated, brow furrowing. "We don't have time for maybe I should just stick to cleaning," Ray interrupted, a layer of sarcasm threading through his words even as his heart raced. "Or maybe I can help save her." A ripple of urgency rippled through the group, and Ray watched as their authority teetered. Gathering all the courage he could muster, he stepped further into the chaos, gesturing towards the monitors reflecting the woman's declining vitals. "Please, just let me explain," he urged, regret and hope momentarily intertwining his heart. Would they let him breach the constructed barriers of status and profession? The tension thickened as the lead doctor glanced at his peers, silently weighing his options. Ray's eyes darted back to the woman. Time was fragmenting with every passing second, the relentless beeping of the heart monitor punctuating the pregnant silence. His mind raced, that familiar twist of doubt whispering in his ear. Was it audacious to believe he could play a part in saving her? Suddenly, a flicker of recognition crossed the doctor's face, and he nodded reluctantly, as though giving permission to explore this unexpected route. "Go on." Then he relented, but the skepticism never fully faded from his gaze. Taking a deep breath, Ray allowed himself to step into the void, shifting from the shadows into the glaring light of scrutiny. He was no longer just a cleaner with a mop. He was someone in possession of knowledge that could bridge the chasm between the forgotten and the revered. He pulled from the recesses of his learning, piecing together a plan, a strategy that lay at the intersection of bravado and desperation. As he explained, defining the pathways through which the body's signals traveled, he saw their expressions shift from disbelief to intrigue. Ray could feel the pulse of possibility stirring within him, igniting a spark where doubt used to dwell. But this was just the beginning of a larger confrontation, his battle for acknowledgement and the chance to transform anger and neglect into something meaningful. The thought of being cast aside once more loomed ominously. Could he maintain this momentum? Could he convince them that his knowledge mattered, and in doing so, reclaim his identity from the shadows? The stakes now felt higher than ever, both on a personal and professional level. The doctors knelt by the woman's side, beginning to implement his suggestions. Ray realized he was standing on a precipice, a new chapter unfolding with each breath, echoing the haunting question of what he'd accomplish next. Would his actions seal his fate, or would they become the catalyst for something larger? With all eyes on the commotion around him, he felt the dawning realization that the world may be beginning to see him. And as the woman's condition began to stabilize under their collective efforts, he understood that this was merely a taste of a much larger journey that lay ahead. The moment had come to pursue his destiny, but how far would he be willing to go to change the narrative of his life? Ray's heart raced as his fingertips grazed the edge of the hospital bed. The sterile scent of antiseptic mingled with the acrid undertones of adrenaline. He could feel the heat of scrutiny from the medical team, but within that pressure, he had forged a fragile ember of resolve. As the lead doctor barked orders, Ray's mind thrummed with the knowledge he had fought so hard to claim. Each word slid off his lips as effortlessly as the sweat beading on his forehead. "Activate her vagus nerve through gentle pressure on the carotid sinus," he suggested, his voice steady yet urgent, cutting through the ambient noise of sirens and distant chatter. The doctor hesitated, brow furrowed, his confidence wavering. "How do you know this?" The doctor said, the incredulity palpable. For a moment, Ray wrestled with the impulse to shrink back, to retreat into the shadows where he had always resided. But with the woman's life hanging in the balance, he pushed against that instinct, determined to stand firm. "I read about it after my brother collapsed," he stammered out, the truth pouring from him unfiltered. "I had to find something, anything that might help him, something I could hold on to in the chaos." The memory of his brother's lifeless body haunted him, igniting fires of guilt and a fierce urgency to prevent another tragedy. That moment, Ray caught a glimpse of disbelief shift into something more complex curiosity, perhaps mixed with a fleeting respect. There was a heartbeat of silence where skepticism once thrived. The lead doctor turned to his team, seeking silent counsel. Ray felt hope flicker anew. "Fine," the doctor relented, voice taut with tension. "Let us give a shot. But if this doesn't work, it will work." The conviction in Ray's voice surprised even him. He had rarely self-affirmed like this. Yet here, firm in the spotlight, his worth and knowledge converged for what felt like a momentous awakening. The doctors rallied, following his prompts with an unsettling blend of disbelief and blind trust. Ray found himself deepening into the experience. No longer a mere janitor, he resurrected a different narrative, one of competence and courage. His heart beat in sync with the rhythm of the monitors, tethering him to both hope and despair. Each moment dragged on, each decision weighing more heavily than the last. Out of the corner of his eye, he spotted a fellow crew member, a hospital technician, watching him with a mix of admiration and confusion. Could this janitor, this once-ignored man, become something greater? With every order barked, Ray began to feel the veil between the doctors and himself narrowing. They moved seamlessly, integrating his advice, and soon the woman's vitals began to stabilize. Relief wafted through the room like a soft breeze, yet weaved into that warmth was a simmering fear. What if they turned away from him once the emergency passed? What if he returned to the janitorial closet, unseen and unheard? As the seconds ticked by, their shared focus on the woman became surreal, like a delicate dance he had unknowingly joined. Ray's thoughts spiraled into possibilities. Perhaps there was more to him than mops and buckets. Perhaps he could forge a future beyond these walls, armed with knowledge and an undying spirit. But a lurking dread shadowed his triumph. Would they treat his contributions as a passing anomaly, a fluke on a chaotic day? The doubt raced through his veins. Every breath was tinged with what lay just beyond this moment. Ray's heart thudded heavier than before, fueling a burgeoning sense of urgency. He coughed up the words he had held back for too long. "I want to study medicine. I want this to matter." The doctor's brief glance met his own, and Ray felt the weight of that simple gaze. The path he desired was outlined before him, fraught with risks, challenges, and perhaps disdain. Yet, it flickered with promise, a chance to redefine who he could become. As the murmurs of the team echoed around him, Ray understood that this was only the beginning. With resolve hunting through him, he had opened a door, but where? Would it lead? Would he have the strength to step through it? The next revelation awaited him just beyond his own apprehensions, ready to redefine the boundaries of his life. The sterile light of the hospital room flickered above, and Ray stood in the center of a whirlwind of chaos and command. As the woman stabilized, the adrenaline began to wear off, leaving behind fragments of mental clarity entwined with fear. The doctor's fleeting respect could just as easily turn into dismissal once the crisis abated. As the chaos subsided, an odd sense of isolation enveloped him. The applause he craved from his colleagues appeared to elude him still. Instead, he observed their relieved smiles, reflecting their gratitude towards the outcome, all while feeling the growing chasm between his role and theirs. He was still the janitor in their eyes, despite momentarily being their unexpected savior. With her heart rate now steady, the room started to empty as the medical team transitioned to other emergencies. A burning urgency to communicate his dream settled in Ray's chest, Yet lingering doubt gnawed at him. Did his actions hold any credibility? Would they remember him? Or would he fade back into obscurity? Hey, you. The voice, rich and compelling, belonged to the lead doctor, Dr. Harris. You did a good thing today. We owe you. Ray felt his chest swell with pride, mixed with disbelief. I just did what I could, what I read about. His humility, however genuine, felt like a mask, dulling the significance of the moment. Not everyone would have the presence of mind you just showed. Don't underestimate yourself. The moment flickered, the weight of those words spinning in his mind. Perhaps he needed to step beyond this role of perennial invisibility. Perhaps there lay the potential to unlock doors within himself that were previously locked by self-doubt. Still, a question lingered: how could he turn this experience into something substantial? He envisioned himself in a white coat, not just sweeping floors, but standing shoulder to shoulder with professionals, providing life-saving interventions. Ray pulled in a deep breath, contemplating the direction he wanted to steer his life. Could he muster the courage to really pursue medicine? Or was that fantasy destined to stay submerged beneath the surface of his reality? On his way back to the janitor's closet, Ray's thoughts spiraled out of control. Would he even qualify to pursue medicine? He could feel the constraints of his past, his lack of education, the whispers of ridicule from those who knew him. Yet, amidst the melancholy, rays of light shone through. He remembered the textbooks he had tucked away in his old backpack, almost as old as his desire to learn. Late-night readings filled with anatomical diagrams and pharmacological terms had sparked something unspeakable within him. It reminded him that knowledge could empower. Knowledge had already nudged him into the spotlight of that emergency. As he reached the janitorial room, something switched to determination climbed within him. He needed to update his knowledge, to get real guidance on pursuing medicine rather than just letting dreams flutter away like shadows. Ray hesitated, fist poised on the door handle, pondering his next move. Would he dare to seek out that elusive mentorship? Raise the subject of his aspirations to Dr. Harris? How could he break the silence surrounding his ambition of becoming a doctor? Taking a breath to settle his thoughts, he knew he had made a critical decision. This wasn't enough. And with each step he took back towards the hospital corridors, he felt the flames of ambition begin to blaze brighter within him. But just as he bolstered his resolve, a figure appeared before him, one that could fan those flames or extinguish them completely. It was the hospital technician who had watched him earlier, eyes gleaming with unexpected intensity. "Ray, right?" she said, a curious spark flickering in her expression. "I need to talk to you about what happened in there." The weight of that sentence hung in the air, promising a revelation or possibly a confrontation. Would her words bolster his aim, or were they simply the harbingers of doubt he feared? Ray felt his heart race as he met the technician's gaze, her green eyes probing, yet laced with understanding. He had never considered himself the subject of impressed scrutiny, not in this world of white coats and sterile steel. "What about it?" He managed, his voice steadier than his thoughts. "You did something extraordinary in there. You saved a life, Ray." She stepped closer. "But I know how the system works. People like us, people without the right background, were often overlooked. And I can help you change that." Her words coursed through him like an electric current, awakening all the dormant hopes he had buried under years of self-doubt. "Change what?" he asked, not yet allowing himself to dream. "Your path. I saw how you handled yourself, and I'm sure Dr. Harris noticed too. You've got potential." She glanced around, ensuring they were discreet. But it'll take more than just guts to pursue medicine. It takes knowledge, connections, and most importantly, faith in yourself. Ray's pulse quickened again, adrenaline mixing with anxiety. "I don't have any formal education," he said, aware of his limits, his lack of credentials, mentors, a significant trajectory. "I can't just leap into med school." "Not yet," she replied. "But there are steps between here and there. You need to start somewhere, right? Maybe shadowing, getting some courses under your belt. The hospital offers programs. I could help you navigate them." Each word she spoke dug deeper into his hidden aspirations, drawing out the vision of himself, not merely as the janitor, but as a peer among doctors. What he had seen as an insurmountable wall now appeared as a series of stepping stones, each one specked with possibility. Yet, in the recesses of Ray's mind, doubt festered. What if they say no? What if they laugh? Then they're fools, she said, a fierce glint in her eye. You've already done something most wouldn't dare. They can't dismiss that. The tension in the air shifted, wrapping around him as he deliberated. She was offering a lifeline, a chance to transform a fleeting moment of courage into a lasting change. I want this, more than anything, he confessed, the gravity of his ambitions spilling forth. But I'm afraid. Afraid? She echoed, tilting her head. Fear is natural, but it can't be the one in charge. Just imagine earning that white coat, feeling that pulse of life like you did back there, but with the knowledge to do even more. She paused, gauging his reaction, and in that silence, Ray glimpsed the outline of his fate beginning to emerge. Years of familiarity and submission began to crack, exposing the sturdy resolve that lay beneath. He could picture it, the years spent learning, growing, transforming. Determined now, his voice broke through the fog of self-doubt. "Help me," he urged. "I want to meet Dr. Harris." A small smile creased her lips as she nodded, already mapping the next steps in her mind. "Let us see what we can do. You deserve a chance to be heard, Ray." But just then, as hope surged anew, a sense of foreboding crept back in. What if the doctor dismissed him? What if he was relegated back into obscurity after all? The question echoed relentlessly, a reminder of the uncertainty that loomed ahead. They walked together towards Dr. Harris's office, but as they approached, Ray faltered. Doubts clawed at him, pulling him back while the technician urged him forward. The door loomed before him like a gateway between two lives. One was the mundane existence he had known, and the other, a future shimmering with promise but laced with the risk of rejection. This was a pivotal moment, a doorway cracked open. But could he muster the courage to step through? As he lifted his hand to knock, the technician stood beside him, her presence bolstering his resolve. Would the next few moments define him, or would he retreat into the shadows once again? The answer to that question hung in the air, waiting to be revealed. The knock echoed, a sharp sound over the quiet of the corridor, and Ray felt his pulse quicken even more, as if the very momentum of his life had shifted. With each heartbeat, he could feel the weight of expectation bearing down, both from within and the technician beside him. The door creaked open, revealing Dr. Harris, his expression shifting from curiosity to surprise upon seeing Ray. "What is this about?" Dr. Harris asked, his voice a blend of skepticism and genuine interest. The room swirled with the potential for his future, and Ray stood there, grappling with the gravity of his own words. "I wanted to talk to you about what happened earlier," he stammered, the technician's affirming nod providing just enough encouragement. Dr. Harris motioned for him to enter, and as Ray stepped inside, he glanced around the office, overwhelmed by the walls lined with medical accolades and photos of distinguished colleagues. This wasn't just a room. It was a mausoleum of achievement. Each framed piece screamed the barriers separating him from those accomplishments. "Quite the scene you caused today," Dr. Harris said, taking a seat and leaning forward. "Word travels fast in the hospital." Ray nodded, aware that his actions in the emergency room had drawn unexpected attention. "I didn't mean to cause a stir. I wanted to help." "And you did help," the doctor replied, his tone shifting to one of acknowledgement. "I'm impressed, but this isn't the first time something extraordinary has happened in this hospital. Every staff member has a different skill set. What makes you think you stand out among them?" Ray felt the walls of his self-doubt begin to close in again. "I hesitated. I want to be more than just someone mopping floors, doctor. I want to study medicine, but I don't have the formal qualifications." His voice weakened at the last part. "What do you have, then?" Dr. Harris pressed, his eyes narrowing with newfound curiosity. "Passion? A willingness to learn? Those are important, but what else?" Ray stumbled through the thoughts swirling in his mind. "I've seen how people act under stress. I know what it's like to want something and be afraid. I've learned resilience." And he paused, his breath hitching. "I want to make a difference." "Then make a difference." Dr. Harris's voice was firm, cutting through Ray's despair like a flashing beacon. You already started today. Why not take a more structured path? You said you want to study medicine. What is stopping you from getting started? Silence filled the room. Ray's heart sank beneath the weight of his fears. But as he looked around at the accolades, he realized those achievements hadn't come without struggle and tenacity. The visions of himself, not as an inferior worker, but as a peer and contributor, began piecing themselves together. I'm afraid I won't be accepted. Dr. Harris leaned back, studying him. Fear can't be your only driver. You'll face rejection in many forms. But often, that rejection can fuel desire. The question becomes, how bad do you want it? Ray inhaled deeply, the room swallowing his internal conflict. I want it so badly, I just don't know how to start. Start by believing in yourself, the doctor replied, his demeanor softening slightly. You'll never know unless you take those first steps. There's a program here for aspiring candidates. I can help you apply, but, Ray, you must commit to pursuing it. In that moment, Ray felt the tension within him ignite into something powerful. I will. I'll commit. As relief washed over him, unshackling his spirit, the door creaked open once more, and Ray glanced over, only to see a colleague, someone who often dismissed him, standing on the threshold, his eyes wide in disbelief. Just then, something shifted and Ray of fire began to burn. But the realization struck sharply. He was standing on the precipice of a new identity, and it was already attracting attention. Would he be ridiculed for his aspirations, or would he rise? What awaited him beyond this moment of battle against perception or a chance at redemption? The newfound resolve simmered beneath the surface, and with it came uncertainty. What other obstacles would he face, both internal and external? Determined, he breathed deeply, awaiting the next challenge that may lie ahead, feeling as if he were only moments away from either triumph or a formidable setback. Ray stood frozen for a moment, the unmistakable weight of scrutiny clinging to him. His colleague's shocked expression ignited a flicker of doubt, bringing back memories of whispered criticisms and condescending remarks. Would today's display of courage transform into ridicule tomorrow? Yet, a deeper resolve surged within him, forging an unyielding commitment to rise beyond his circumstances. Brushing aside the specter of judgment, Ray squared his shoulders and turned to Dr. Harris, who regarded him expectantly. You mentioned a program, Ray said, adopting an assertive tone. What I need to do to get started? Dr. Harris's eyes twinkled with unexpected pride. First, you'll need to gather your academic history, even if it's sparse. We'll need letters of recommendation. Since you're already known in critical situations, I could provide a reference. We can work on a personal statement that showcases your determination and unique perspective. The thought of applying made Ray's heart race, but beyond the flutter of fear lay an electrifying anticipation. I'll do it, he declared with newfound clarity. Good, Dr. Harris replied, nodding. But this requires commitment. Medical school is demanding. You'll need to study diligently and keep up with courses. The words settled heavily, but Ray felt ready to embrace the challenge. As the two continued their discussion, Ray envisioned a life where every hour spent in study was a step closer to his dreams. The fire inside grew. This was not just a passing wish anymore. It was becoming a life path. Over the following weeks, Ray dedicated himself to the pursuit. He spent evenings poring over textbooks in his tiny apartment, the faint glow of the lamp illuminating notes scrawled in determined handwriting. He wrestled with science equations and medical jargon, driven by a vision of a white coat, the privilege of saving lives. In between his studies, he faced personal battles, too. Every day, his hands still bore the grime of cleaning floors, but his heart was ablaze with purpose. However, with each advancement, he felt the weight of his past creeping in through the cracks of his optimism. Would his coworkers continue to see him as merely a janitor? Would they ever recognize the strides he was making? Then there was the looming fear that his efforts could lead to failure. As he applied for the program, a familiar echo of self-doubt knocked at his spirit. What if he wasn't smart enough? What if he fell short when it mattered? The day finally arrived when Ray received an email notification about an interview with the program's admission team. His heart thundered as he clicked open the message. There was in black and white. They wanted to meet him. As he prepared for the interview, an internal whirlwind of thoughts ensued. He practiced answers to potential questions in front of the mirror, rehearsing fervently. I am capable. I am determined. I am ready, he murmured, though the words felt unfamiliar, slipping through the cracks of his more familiar narrative of inadequacy. Finally, the fateful day arrived, and Ray stood outside the admissions office, his palms slick with sweat. He could hear hushed conversations from within and felt the atmosphere heavy with expectation. To walk into that room meant confronting both his dreams and the shadow of failure simultaneously. The door opened, and Ray stepped inside, the air thick with anticipation and the faint scent of disinfectant. All eyes turned to him, and in that pivotal moment, he had to confront the reality. The fire of ambition coursing through him could negate the whispers of doubt, but only if he transformed it into the presence of self-belief. As the interview commenced, questions flew at him, testing his resilience and commitment. Ray could feel his confidence waver at times, but he recalled Dr. Harris's words: fear could either paralyze him or propel him forward. Standing on the edge of dreams, Ray understood he was redefining who he was. Would he rise against the judgment of others, or would old insecurities hold him back? The moment of truth loomed, and Ray knew that stepping forward could change everything. Would his journey lead to acceptance among peers, or would he again be met with disbelief? The tension built as his aspirations hung delicately. The final question awaited, its impact yet unfathomed, thrusting Ray further into his uncharted territory. Ray's breath caught as the final question echoed in the small room. Why do you believe you deserve a place in this program? It felt like a second heartbeat away from everything he had fought for, a challenge to articulate the essence of his journey. That he steadied himself, drawing upon the experiences that had come together to form not just his qualifications, but his identity. I believe I deserve this opportunity because I've been at the bottom and I know what it means to fight for a chance. Every day, I've faced the scrutiny of people who underestimate me, and yet I'm still here, learning, improving. His voice grew stronger as he spoke, but behind the facade of confidence lurked the specter of doubt. Despite his words, he questioned whether the panel could ever see the value in a man defined by his work boots and cleaning supplies. Could they hear the sweeper-esque story in the cadence of his speech, or would he remain just another voice in a room full of polished resumes? As the interview concluded, Ray left the building, a torrent of thoughts swirling around him. Each step echoed with potential, a rhythm of both anxiety and hope. Had he done enough? Would he be invited back or left to languish in obscurity? The intensity of uncertainty ignited a pulse of determination deep within him. Over the next few days, he transformed his anxiety into action. Revisions of his personal statement began to flow. He poured his heart onto the pages as he shared struggles and triumphs intertwined. Each word became a vehicle for the truth, his truth. He uncovered memories of caring for others as a cleaner, telling stories of patients he'd seen in waiting rooms where he'd worked. There were moments of kindness, glimpses of humanity amidst the chaos of life. Then came a revelation. In sharing his narrative, Ray discovered a hidden competence. He began to realize his ability to empathize, to connect with others beyond words. This attribute didn't stem merely from his experiences. It was the culmination of his life's labor. The cleaning job had granted him an unfiltered perspective on life and suffering. Who else could offer insight into the challenges faced by patients? Driven by his sense of purpose, he sought feedback from Dr. Harris on his revised statement. "It's compelling," Dr. Harris said, an approving nod affirming Ray's insight. "You've articulated not just your qualifications, but the fire behind your ambitions. Trust that fire." But even as encouragement enveloped him, the specter of failure tickled his consciousness, gnawing away at his newfound resolve. What if the program filled its seats with individuals far more accomplished, polished, impressive? Could a janitor in training earn this privilege, or was he destined to remain in the shadows? With these mixed emotions weighing upon him, Ray felt the call to not let fear dictate his story. He began to visualize scenarios side by side with patients, guiding them through their tough moments, navigating the labyrinth of healthcare. Empowered by this image, he experienced the overwhelming urgency of clarity. He needed to ensure his submission stood out in the days that followed. He intensified his studies. Books piled around him like old friends, each turning page a battle won against self-doubt. Late hours folded into early mornings, but with each passing moment, he felt closer to becoming the person he aspired to be. Then, just as momentum appeared to solidify, an unexpected confrontation derailed Reyes' focus. While answering questions during a study session with colleagues, one of them, Tanner, raised his voice in a mocking tone. "What makes you think you can walk among us once you actually get into med school?" Ray's insides churned. This wasn't just banter. It was an assault on his worth. Silence filled the air, and all eyes landed on Ray. Each gaze felt both supportive and accusatory. And there, in that instant, he faced a choice. Let the menial taunts diminish his journey, or claim the narrative for himself. The challenge rang clear. The moment had come to confront not just Tanner, but the perceptions that had hovered like clouds over him ever since he had decided to aim higher. How would Ray respond to that challenge? Would he rise up against the negativity surrounding him or retreat into the comfort of conformity? In this pivotal juncture, uncertainty hung heavier than ever, an inflection point waiting to be navigated. Ray paused, the weight of Tanner's words pressing into him like a physical barrier. In that charged silence, something stirred within him, a fire igniting against the chill of ridicule. He could feel the weight of every ounce of effort he'd poured into his journey. Every late night spent studying while the world continued to spin on an axis of privilege and advantage. They would see him as nothing more than a cleaner, entrenched in an existence they had deemed less worthy. Yet Ray had always viewed his role as foundational, a vital support to those navigating their own struggles. Biting back the urge to retaliate with anger, he focused instead on clarity. "You may see me as just a janitor," he began slowly, each word sharp with intention, "but I'm working to become more than that. I'm fighting, not just for myself, but for everyone who has ever been overlooked. And someday, I'll stand alongside people like you as an equal." Surprise swept across the faces of his colleagues. Ray noticed the subtle shifts in their expressions. Some were uncomfortable, others contemplative. He took a step towards Tanner, challenging the young man's smugness with unwavering eye contact. "Everyone's path is different," he continued, consciously infusing his anger with conviction. "I may have started at the bottom, but I've learned resilience and compassion in ways you might never understand. We're not just a collection of GPAs. We're human beings, and our stories matter." The atmosphere thickened, his words strung together by a taut thread of tension. Tanner shifted uncomfortably, and Ray recognized the seeds of doubt blossoming behind that once confident facade. The confrontation unearthed not just his own strength, but also the unexpected effects his words could have on others, a realization that stirred a hint of pride within him. The study session lingered on in an awkward silence, the weight of the moment crystallizing within each participant. Finally, one of Reyes' colleagues, a quiet girl named Emily, broke through. "Thank you for saying that," she said softly. "I've always felt that way too, but I didn't know how to express it." This hidden camaraderie sparked intrigue in Ray. Maybe he wasn't alone in feeling like an outsider. While Tanner's jeering had stung, it had also forced other students to reveal their own insecurities. Here they were, a room of aspiring healers, confronting not just the struggle for acceptance, but also the deeper issues of value that pervaded their shared ambitions. As the days passed, bolstered by that encounter, Ray poured himself deeper into study, fueled by the knowledge that he was not just fighting for a seat in a program, but carving a path for himself that would allow him to advocate for others. He began to seek out opportunities to volunteer at local clinics, further engaging with patients whose stories echoed his own. Each interaction reinforced the values he'd come to cherish: empathy, understanding, resilience. During one particularly busy shift, he met Sarah, a middle-aged woman with a warm smile. She seemed to radiate love despite the struggles outlined in her weary eyes. They chatted as she waited for her appointment, and she shared her concerns about finances and health. Listening intently, Ray felt a profound connection. His heart thudded with recognition. In meeting Sarah, he understood the true architecture of his future was being cemented not just through academia, but through empathy. "I'm grateful for the care you give, you understand," she said, her voice steady yet punctuated by worry. "You have a gift with people, you know." Ray absorbed the weight of her words. They echoed off the hardships and judgments he had long wrestled with, an external affirmation of what had originated inside him. Empowered, he began to embrace his new identity with vigor. His studies flourished. He revealed every facet of his perspective in the dialogue he engaged with at the clinic, while still maintaining the relentless pursuit of formal education. Caught in this whirlwind of personal growth, he wrestled with the looming question of Tanner's mockery. Did he belong here? And if so, would he still be able to advocate for those outside the glamour of privilege? Just as clarity began to seep into his understanding, a sudden message popped up on his phone, a notification from the program he had applied to, glittering with possibilities and uncertainties. The time had come. His heart raced. The moment of validation or rejection could change everything. What awaited him within? Would this potential acceptance fill him with hope, or would it stoke the flames of despair? As he stood on the precipice of this moment, his resolve wavered, fueled by curiosity and dread. Would he be recognized for his journey, or would he disappear once again into the shadows? Ray stood at the crossroads of transformation, heart pounding with anticipation and anxiety. He had come a long way from the invisible janitor, the man who spent long hours alone with his thoughts while mopping floors in the echoing corridors of the hospital. Now, as he dissected the implications of his submission to the medical program, he felt the weight of potential sliding into his grasp. It wasn't merely about seeking acceptance. It was about defining his identity and asserting his place in a world that had too often dismissed him. The notification shimmered in bold letters on his phone. "Congratulations, Ray. You have been accepted into the program." Goosebumps erupted across his skin, a visceral reaction to the validation he had both craved and feared. He had conquered the first step on a path he once deemed impossible, and joy danced within him, intermingling with a deep-seated determination. Ray reveled in the feeling, realizing that he had not just attained an acceptance letter. He had shattered the silence of self-doubt that had bound him for so long. Each sleepless night spent with textbooks had carved out a reservoir of knowledge and skills that were finally acknowledged. The janitor had stepped into the light of recognition, not just from peers, but from himself. He took a moment to reflect on this profound change. Just weeks ago, he had wrestled with fears and insecurities, facing ridicule from colleagues who viewed his aspirations as far-fetched. Today, those whispers felt like echoes of a distant past, overshadowed by the legacy of resilience that now defined him. As his classmates gathered to celebrate their acceptance, he found himself at the nexus of admiration and challenge. During the mingled introductions, he encountered members of the group who had looked through him before. This time, they registered his presence with a mix of surprised respect and curiosity. "You were the one who helped save that woman, weren't you?" one remarked, genuine interest sparking in their eyes. Ray smiled, a flicker of pride igniting within him. "Yeah, that was me." The acknowledgement felt electrifying. It wasn't just a point of interest, it was proof of his competency, an affirmation of his journey. He saw them recalibrating their perceptions, forming an unusual bridge between their elite education and his gritty resolve. Each moment in this new world empowered him further, providing affirmation that he belonged. The imposter syndrome he had suffered beneath the weight of judgments began to evaporate. Instead, He embraced the opportunities presented to him with unwavering intent to learn, to grow, and above all, to ensure he never forgot where he came from or those like him fighting for their place in the world in the coming months. As lectures transitioned into hands-on experiences, Ray made a deliberate effort to connect with patients, infusing empathy into every interaction. He remembered Sarah, whose warmth brightened his journey, and sought to embody that same compassion in his practice. From the beginning, he had understood that medical knowledge was a tool, but connecting with patients went beyond textbooks. Real healing arose from understanding their stories. Each time he wore the white coat for practical sessions, Ray felt astutely aware of the journey that led him there. He was no longer citizens by the unseen shadows. He was a part of the fabric of this institution, contributing through hard-earned experience. Feedback from instructors commended his unique perspective, urging him to lean into the blend of intellect and empathy he had cultivated, reminding Ray that his past was an asset, not a liability. Still, old fears occasionally clawed for attention, whispering of the janitor in the background, the one who might still be looked down upon. Yet with every challenge that surfaced, Ray fortified his resolve, transforming every moment of doubt into opportunities to inspire others. He would return to the clinic, cultivating understanding and care beyond medication, encouraging support, compassion, and resilience among those who shared his struggles. Months rolled into a rich tapestry of growth, each thread interwoven with moments of triumph over adversity. The day came when Ray was invited to share his story in front of a group considering a charitable healthcare initiative, an opportunity to illuminate not just the achievements but the authenticity of his journey. As he stepped onto the stage, the room filled with faces: medical professionals, students, and patients. For the first time, he wasn't wrapped in the shadow of doubt, but stood barefoot on the solid ground of self-acceptance. "I used to think I was just a janitor," Ray began, voice steady with conviction, "but I learned that every story has the power to heal. Now, I'm not just here to tell you mine. I'm here to show what togetherness and understanding can achieve." Applause erupted, reverberating through the space, but the true recognition came in the form of shared stories, tales of hope and perseverance just like his. That day, Ray savored the transformative power of acceptance, achieving not just his dreams, but affecting others in ways he had longed for. As he walked off the stage, the warmth of accomplishment wrapped around him like a familiar embrace. The journey had been long, filled with barriers and shadows, yet here he stood no longer identified by his labor, but embraced as a healer on the cusp of greatness. This was his victory, a conclusion marked not simply by a title or degree, but by the confidence of knowing he had conquered the fears that had held him captive for years. He had done it. The janitor turned medical student was finally recognized, transforming his narrative into one of inspiration and empowerment. And for anyone watching him, Ray radiated hope. He was now more than just a symbol of capability. He embodied the identity of a life transformed, one molded by knowledge, heart, and an unwavering sense of purpose. Now, this is your moment to take action. You need to subscribe now. Don't miss out on the journey of personal transformation right here on this channel. It's time to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and keep these powerful stories alive. We want to hear from you. Comment your thoughts, reactions, and theories about Ray's incredible journey. And remember, don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see what is possible when you refuse to give up. Your support matters.